Welcome everybody, and this is our meeting notification, and I'd like to start really quick with the Kumaya land acknowledgement. I'm in San Diego, and this was created by Mike Connolly McWish, a member of the Kumaya tribe here in San Diego, and a student at San Diego State University. And since I'm an Aztec alumni and I live on Montezuma Mesa right here close to San Diego State, I will acknowledge that we stand upon a land that carries the footsteps of a millennia of Kumaya people. They are a people whose traditional lifeways intertwine with a worldview of earth and sky in a community of living beings. This land is part of a relationship that is nourished, healed, protected, embraced the Kumaya people to the present day. It is part of a worldview founded in the harmony of cycles of the sky, balance of the life, the forces of life, for the harmony within our bodies as well as the world around us. As students, faculty, hang on, sorry about that. We have problems with being bombed with malware. As students, faculty, staff, alumni of San Diego State University, we acknowledge the legacy of the Kumaya. We promote this balance in life as we pursue the goals of knowledge and understanding. We find inspiration in the Kumaya spirit to open our minds and hearts. It is the legacy of the red and black in the land of the Kumaya. Iyehun, my heart is good. So thank you to the Kumaya people for sharing their land with us that we have usurped. And this is our agenda. And this forum is going to be about water everywhere, but with fracking, not a drop to spare. And I started this mostly because I was very concerned about fracking. And when I raised the alarm to Mike suggested I reach out and to our leadership and steering committee. And Wade Alexander was nice enough to volunteer to co-do this forum with me. And so we now are looking at this from a lot of myriad perspectives, because we heard that there was an announcement that the Colorado River Authority was cutting back on the allotment of water to the Colorado River. And we have heard from the weathercasters that we are in a super drought, and we can expect this next 3-4 years. So this draws even more importance to this. And with fracking destroys our groundwater. And so if we don't have groundwater and we're not getting raw water from the Colorado River, that means we're going to be more water in Southern California, Northern California, to keep people in water. So with all that being said, I'm going to introduce our moderator, Steph Gross, to introduce, oh, I should have mentioned the format. The format is anybody who has questions, there is a chat button that you can submit your chat questions, and they will be assembled. We don't have a great deal of time for questions and answers. We only have 10 minutes. So make your questions brief and to the point, so that we can try and get them addressed. And if questions that we don't get answered, I will put them out in a email to our participants, and they can respond to them. And we will put that back out to everybody that attended the meeting, and especially the person who asked the question. So now let me introduce Steph Gross, and we're going to mute everybody else, and we will turn it on over to Steph Gross.
Thank you very much, David Wright, Mike Dollar. I appreciate your invitation to moderate tonight's water everywhere, but for fracking, every drop counts. Folks, this is a very, very critical and urgent topic. And so we'd like to thank you in advance for attending and taking the time to be here to hear this valuable information. We do have a call to action in the end, but we want to get right into the panel because we have a star-studded list tonight. They're going to go down an order of the agenda. Dr. Tiffany Boyd Hodgson, Igor Tregub, Aura Vasquez, Dr. Scott Kelley, Chief Colleen Sisk, and we're going to wrap it up with some Q&A for the chat. So that's the order in the run of show, and this is all timed out. And for those of you who've not met me, I like to stay on time. So that way everyone has an opportunity to hear other people speak and also have time for that Q&A. I'll be keeping time. I will probably more than likely post over in the chat when you have 2 minutes to go. So that way, or I'll flag it too. So that way, you know, you can start wrapping up your particular presentation. Before we jump right in with Dr. Boyd Hodgson, do we have any questions, comments, answers, suggestions right off the bat that we can get out of the way really quick? Outstanding. My name is Steph Gross. I am the former chair of the City of San Diego's Human Relations Commission, as well as a Democratic leader here in the San Diego County area. And I do a number of other things, but tonight it's all about being progressive, taking action, and really putting a stop to this fracking in California. And so heading right into our first subject matter expert. Did great in her campaign, had a lot of support. I voted for her myself, Dr. Tiffany Boyd Hodgson. You have, what do you have here, 15 minutes? So you actually have a little bit over 15 minutes. So that being said, Dr. Tiffany Hodgson.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm honored to be participating in this panel. I do have some slides to share, and let me see if I can just do that quickly. Oh, it doesn't look like I can share.
Can we co-chair her?
While we're doing that, I can continue just talking. You know, when I found out that I was going first, I thought it would be a good idea for me to level set everyone, at least in Southern California, where our water comes from. And I know that several of us are going to be talking about fracking later on, but the tee up is that, you know, water, of course, is a finite resource. And where we are right now, we are in drought conditions. And this isn't the first drought, but I am going to share with you some of the messaging that's been put out by San Diego Water Authority. I'm going to have a couple of calls to action as well. And let me see if I can share my screen. Very good. Okay. Can you all see a screen that has your logo and my logo on it?
Yes.
Thumbs up? Yes. Okay. All right. Let me see if I can do the presentation mode. Yes. Okay. So thank you again. I'm grateful to be here. I didn't know we were going to do a land acknowledgement up front, but I'm going to do one because I'm coming to you from Cal State University San Marcos, which is still home to the 6 federally recognized bands of the La Jolla, Pala, Palma, Pachanga, Rincon, Saboba, Luiseno, Payam Coalition people. And I want to also acknowledge that we are guests on untraditional, unceded Luiseno, Payam Coalition land. Before I go on, I want to tell you a brief story. This week I attended, as part of my duties on the Vallecitos Water District, I attended the Association of California Water Agencies meeting, and it was all about regional drought impacts. And I heard a very moving story, and I've got my notes in front of me, so I apologize. I'm going to be looking sort of back and forth with my notes, but I heard a story about a water district called the Redwood Valley District. And a man by the name of Tom Schoeneman was speaking. And unlike Vallecitos Water District, which is an elected position and we are paid, Mr. Schoeneman is the president of his board, and it's a volunteer job. He's been doing it for a long time, and it's a volunteer job, and he calls himself the president of the board of directors of a failing water district. And that intrigued me because I thought, wow, a failing water district, that takes a lot for somebody to be that vulnerable and admit that as the president of the board. And what he described to me, being in the Redwood Valley, they service 190 agricultural accounts, 1,200 domestic accounts. And since 1989, They've had no secure source of water. They can no longer hook up water to residencies, and they have only allowed their customers to use 55 gallons of water a day right now. People are stealing water. And he said, there's no water. There's no water. And I thought to myself, wow, that really brings it home. In Southern California, we have a different set of challenges. But as I'll explain and show you in just a couple minutes, we have been assured that we can weather this drought from San Diego Water Authority. But we have neighbors to the north that have no water. People are lining up at water trucks and they're stealing water. They're turning on hydrants. There's no water. And I think we need to keep that in mind as we talk about drought, as we talk about fracking, we talk about how water is used in fracking and how it contaminates our groundwater and the sources of our water too. I'm going to share with you just to level set. In Southern California, it looks like this. Vallecitos Water District, where I serve, is one of 23 agencies. It's in northern San Diego County, and there are 23 districts. It's broken out as follows. And when I talk about, Southern California, San Diego County, this is what I mean. All of these 23 districts have been relatively reassured that we can weather this drought. But as we know, things happen. Just a year and a half ago, Poway couldn't drink its water. Poway is a large city right here. They couldn't drink its water. Water is precious. It's a finite resource. And as we're going to hear from the fracking experts tonight, we need to oppose fracking. We need to cut it down. And we also need to enact some other things that I'm going to tell you about in just a minute. Further level setting, my call to action is to have you consider running for your water district. We have water districts all across California right now governed by people that don't care about water. They care about water rights, they care about development, and they care about fracking. My call to action to you is to research which water district's up for election in your area and consider running for them. In my own area, which covers San Marcos, Escondido, parts of Vista, and parts of Carlsbad, we have 2 districts up for election. I was elected in 2020. I had 2 opponents, but 2 other people also had seats available, and they ran unopposed. Republicans running unopposed. And of course they won. No one challenged them. So one of my calls to action for you tonight is if you care about water, and you care about the future of water in California, and we all should, because the future is terrifying if we don't make a U-turn. And I encourage you to investigate running for water district in your area. Oftentimes the water district positions are paid, which is important. It is important. We should be paid for our work. So in Southern California, this is just a flow chart of where we get our water. The Sacramento, San Joaquin Delta, the Colorado River, which as Mr. Wright and Mr. Gross spoke about earlier, the water is being reduced. That's where the water comes from. It's piped down. It comes from the snowmelt off of the Sierra Nevadas. It runs down the Colorado River into the Metropolitan Water District and the San Diego Water Authority. That's where the majority of our water comes from. In Vallecitos, which is San Marcos, again, Vista, Escondido, and Carlsbad, we get most of our water from the San Diego Water Authority. We get a little bit from a Livenhain Municipal Water District, but that pretty much also comes from San Diego Water Authority, the Metropolitan Water District. We also get about 27% of our water from desalinated water from the ocean. There's a desalination plant in Carlsbad. And, one of the things that when I was running for office, I thought, well, this is great, but we need to diversify our water sources. Where we get our water isn't always going to be there. And especially so if we're using the water that we get from these finite resources for fracking. So we need people that care about water and can think differently and bigger and outside the box and not along the same lines that we've always been doing things. Going back to Mr. Schoeneman in the Redwood Valley District, he said, there's no water. And if we keep doing the things the same way that we've been doing it, we're going to run out of water. And he did credit the local reservations. He said, the Palma Indians have saved us. And I think that that's really telling. When we think about our relationship to water as colonizers and the relationship that water that the people that came before us had, where they thought of water as a living, breathing, interactive being, it's really telling that the Redwood Valley has run out of water and the Palma Indians have stepped in and saved the district and helped the people. So I want to put that out there. San Diego Water Authority has put out some publications. This is a slide with a lot of words on it. I'm not going to read it to you, but at least in Southern California right now, it appears that we can weather this drought. We're very fortunate. As a result of a few things. Desalinated water, as I mentioned, from the Carlsbad plant, and desalinated water, the desalination process is very environmentally intensive. There is a lot of debate about whether or not we should be desalinating water. And that is a different subject, and I'm happy to answer questions about that. But right now, we are taking in desalinated water in Vallecitos in Southern California. There are long-term contracts that enable the Colorado River to be pumped all the way down to us. So that is not the case for everywhere in Southern California and in California at large. And so because of that arrangement, not everyone is getting the water pumped to them in the way that Southern California is. 190,000 acre feet of emergency and drought response storage capacity have been added in Southern California. An acre foot is, if you can imagine, a football field filled 1 foot deep of water. That's an acre foot, so 190,000 acre feet of water. The good news and the best news and the news that we have the most control over is reducing our water use. Water usage in San Diego has declined by nearly 50% since 1990. We need to keep doing that. And finally, San Diego County ratepayers have conserved more than 1 million acre feet of water over the last 30 years. We need to keep doing that. We can't just keep getting water from other places and paying to have it pumped in. We need to conserve as well. Finally, I just wanted to put out there that we all pay for water. A lot of what we pay for water goes to the moving around of water. And it's a pass-through cost to your local agency. For example, if you are Imperial Valley or Livenhain or Helix, you pay your water bill. A lot of that money goes directly to the San Diego Water Authority, the Metropolitan Water District, or if you're in other parts of Southern California, whatever regional hub is that takes in the water from your water source and then disperses it to your local agencies. So it's complicated and it's finite, and I want to make those points. My call to action for you is, yes, we need to pay attention to fracking and we need to stop fracking. It's an egregious waste of water. It contaminates our groundwater, which we're not using as a source in Southern California very much, but it could be, but not if it's contaminated with fracking chemicals. So I want to put that out there to you. I also want to put out there, please investigate your water district and run for that office. We need you in that office. We need progressive people to run for that district. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd Hodgson. Quick, I know we're going to save some Q&A for the end. However, where do we find information to actually run for our water boards?
So they should be controlled by your county. So for example, well, Vallecitos is a special district. That means it's not controlled by a municipality. For example, Carlsbad has its own water district and it's controlled by the city. So if you wanted to run for, you would have to go through a city office to work on water in Carlsbad. But for Vallecitos, it's a special district. You would go to the San Diego Registrar of Voters. That's what you could call them. This map that I have behind me, this is my district. I got it from the San Diego Registrar of Voters. You can also call your district. Vallecitos, for example, has a handy dandy chart where you can type in your address and you can see which district you reside in. Check your county registrar of voters and check your local water district because they should have that information out there.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. And can attendees access your presentation anywhere for resource or reference?
Oh, sure. I'm happy to send it to Mr. Wright if that works, and then he can disperse it.
Outstanding. Thank you very, very, very much, Dr. Boyd Hodgson. Folks, we are plus 8 minutes, and that 8 minutes gets to roll for everyone else, and we can save a lot of that for the Q&A, so we may have extra Q&A time. We're going to transition right now, because we're a little bit ahead, to Igor Tregub, who is the chair of the CDP Environmental Caucus. So this right now, you're hearing it straight from the caucus leadership on where we stand in California and how we can actually make a difference. Igor, welcome.
Thank you so much, and it's good to be here with all of you. I am very humbled to be amongst all of you today, because you know, Bernie used to say and still says, not me, us. And I'm here to tell you, this is definitely a not me issue. It's an all of us issue. All of us have to come together and take quick and decisive action right now. Unfortunately, and this is truly, you know, when I talk to folks around the country and I tell them we're having these fights in California, they're having a hard time believing me, because California is seen as the tip of the spear of the progressive movement. But those of you who have been fighting these issues for a long time, you know, as well as I do, and there have been articles that have come out in that regard, that there are entrenched forces that have basically banded together to make it very difficult for any progressive pro-environmental justice, pro-climate measures in this legislative cycle to be voted out of the legislature. So whether it's SB 467, which was the second attempt after 345, the first attempt died in the previous legislature, 467 would have continued an attempt to provide common sense setbacks between oil extraction and residential areas, something that 48 states already have, and California does not. Whether it was that issue, whether it was a simple moratorium on fracking. And let me be clear, because nothing is ever simple. So the governor should be applauded, absolutely. And really, all of you should be applauded for leaning on the governor over a number of months, leading him to declare an announcement of a moratorium on fracking. Of course, we also know that the devil is in the details, and that the language of the moratorium left a lot of things up for debate. And they're now being debated at various various agencies whose leadership he has appointed. But even that proclamation, so I am not making light of the fact, I mean, for the governor, it was probably not a simple proclamation to make, but it was a declaration that we are moving on the path of reducing our dependence on fossil fuels, and specifically trying to put to a stop a history of an economy of extraction. I'm going to be very careful not to say labor, because it's not all of labor. It's not even all of the building trades. But there were certain unions that are powerful and often, unfortunately, have been on the same side as, I would say, the highly subsidized and deregulated industry of extraction, that wanted to punish what they saw as pro-environmental leadership when that declaration happened. And so there's an article, if I find it, I will drop it in the chat, but you know, don't take it from me, take it from Cal Matters, so take it from your own experiences. There were some highly paid lobbyists on behalf of labor that said, you know, we're angry that you allowed this moratorium to go through, and now we are going to make it a point that every single environmental climate measure is going to wither on the vine this particular legislative cycle. And we have seen that. We have unfortunately seen that from the demise of bills that I worked on that would have advanced the generation of rooftop solar. Two bills that would have cleaned up our drinking supply. There are a couple of bills, and I will put information about them in the chat as well, specifically on clean drinking water that are moving forward. So that is a really important thing. Water is a human right, and this was testament to frontline communities, particularly in the most impacted parts of California, the parts of the Central Valley, parts of Southern California that came together and are allowing these bills to move forward. But my friends, we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we advance legislation that frankly states that don't have the same progressive reputation that California does have already done, because they're common sense. And the way to do that is to continue to do what we've been doing already and do more of it. And it's not about, as a wise person once put it, it's not about telling folks to find a new religion. It's to take folks that are already in this to church, whatever that church may be for them. And I belong to the church of clean, equitable, affordable drinking water for all. And I know you are in the same church as me on that. So let's do this together.
Wow, Igor, thank you very much. That was powerful. And you even got the applause there from Dr. Kelley. So you're speaking everyone's language for sure. Hey, I just want to circle back. You said the economy of extraction. I think that's a very powerful statement. And because of that statement, are there like 3 key things for a call to action that you could ask this group specifically to do from a CDP Environmental Caucus point of view?
Yeah, thank you so much. There is a big thing actually happening at the federal level. And just an hour ago, I was on a call sponsored by the DNC Environmental Caucus. And it was a struggle to get the DNC leadership, I would say the previous DNC leadership, to even recognize that caucus on the climate crisis. And I'm really glad it exists. And we are working with them to bring folks together to an action that will be happening in front of the Capitol in the next week or so. And I will put that information in the chat as well. And that it's going to be an action to make sure that we no longer give subsidies to fossil fuel companies. That is something that was a fight at the DNC. And unfortunately, a majority of DNC delegates around the country voted for a platform that did not call for an end for these subsidies, but it is something that Biden himself has said that he wants to enforce. So we need to, as former President Obama once said, you have the grassroots support in the streets, now make me do it. So we are going to either congregate on the steps for those closer to the action in DC or virtually. And I'm going to put some information in the chat about how to do that. So that's action number 1. I would say actions 2, 3, 4, and 5 is to join the California Democratic Party Environmental Caucus if you're not part of it already. We've been working very closely in an intersectional way with partners in the Progressive Caucus, in the African American Caucus, in the Rural Caucus, on issues of common concern. There are, after a small reprieve, bills that made it out of one house in the legislature are now moving to the next house. We're going to need to work together to decarbonize our economy. We're going to need to work together next year to bring 467 back. And so to do that, I'm going to drop my email in the chat. Please email me. We'll put you on the caucus listserv. Let's do this together.
Outstanding. Thank you very, very much, Igor. Very informative. Folks, we are plus 14 minutes. So I'd like to see if any of the leadership from PDA and PDA-CA, if they want to chime in, maybe a statement or a blurb or something. I just want to, I mean, we have plenty of time, so I want to make sure they have that opportunity. Anyone?
I know there's a lot more really well qualified people here, and I've been reading some very interesting comments in the chat. But I really want to go back to a question about, if is labor the enemy? Does labor have to be the enemy? Do they have to see that they're not on this same boat with the rest of us? And it's if we don't fix this leaky boat, we're all going to die of thirst. And I'll pass that over to everybody who would like to answer. Igor, Dr. Hudson, anybody?
I guess I can start and look, what's currently going on really breaks my heart, because when I had the opportunity to work in a unionized industry, I was a proud member of my local. And I actually came off my work in environmental justice, activism, and advocacy through my work in the labor movement. I cut my teeth as chair of my, I'm joining you from unceded Alani land in Berkeley, California. I should have started with that. And I served on the Berkeley Commission on Labor. I have been always very proud to have, every time I've run for local office, to have earned the endorsements of most union locals. And that has been a testament to our work together. And so what's important to the labor movement should be important to all of us, and is, because the same highly subsidized forces that are coming at us and trying to squelch opportunities, whether it's to move away from the extractive economy, whether it's move away from introducing all sorts of bad stuff into our water supply, whether it's forces that try to capitalize things that should be in the public interest. These are the same forces we should all be fighting together. There are difficult conversations that are happening within organized labor as well. We need to continue to seek out opportunities to stand on the front lines when they ask for our support, and support them. Labor has recently issued a report. I believe this is the first week that it's public knowledge. I'm going to find that link and drop it in the chat. It's not all of labor, but it's a number of unions that for the first time are saying, we recognize that the climate crisis is an existential crisis, and we as labor need to do something about it. And what's important about this is not folks from outside of labor coming in and telling them what's good for them. This is labor themselves saying they need to transition. There are some unions and some locals that are further along in this effort than others. And I think what it's going to take is having these kinds of conversations. Last week, several party activists, some involved in labor and some involved in the environmental movement, came together to start having these conversations. And it's going to take a while to build mutual trust. But eventually, the hope is that that circle will expand so that we can together fight for self-determination and a just transition into a 100% renewable economy.
Outstanding, Igor. We are 8 minutes, so I want to throw it over to Jenna. Jenna, you had your hand up, so we have about 8 minutes to answer this question. And if we could really frame that for Dr. Boyd, Hodgson, and or Igor, since they've already presented, I think it would be optimal. Jenna?
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Igor, you were spot on. First of all, I think it's really important that we don't dehumanize or like demean or even lift up labor as one entity, because there are several different labor unions, right? But the one common goal that they have is that they want to create jobs for working class people. And they are, depending on what sort of industry they're in, they do that depending on what they're doing. So down here in Orange County, we've had a lot of people who have been, a lot of politicians who have been trying to get the endorsement of labor based on whether or not they support the Poseidon desalination plant. And I don't have a lot of background on this particular plant, but what I've been hearing is that there are environmental issues around this plant that could hurt our coastline. And we've had a lot of issues here in Orange County and stuff. So it's not like we can say they're bad, they're good, they're whatever. The fact is that they are representing the working class in whatever they think is best. But at the same time, we also have this conflict of the fact that if we don't do something about the environment, we're all going to die. Let's be real. So it's not so easy as to say labor is good, labor is bad. But obviously, we need to do something about this. And yeah, the Poseidon plant apparently is a bad thing for us. But I don't have a lot of background on this, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Igor, if I can let Dr. Boyd Hodgson answer that or respond, please.
Sure, thank you. I'd like to amplify a couple of things that I heard from both commentators, and I think it is important that that we appreciate that this is a very nuanced conversation, and that people that work in union jobs, by and large, their job or their goal is to provide for their families, and that's something that if we boil it down to, we can all relate to that. So sometimes they don't have a choice, they go where the opportunity is. What I think we as leaders and environmentalists need to do is to make sure that we are communicating with all the stakeholders, bearing those things in mind. So we understand what labor values, they understand what the environmentalists value, and there's a Venn diagram where there's an intersection of those things. So we move forward having those conversations saying, okay, well, here's what we value, here's what we value. Oh, look at these commonalities. How can we approach this and do these things together? And we try to avoid the black and white thinking of, well, this is bad, this is good. I did mention desalination earlier, and I mentioned, that we get about 27% in Southern California of our water from a desal plant. And I know that there is one going up in Huntington Beach apparently as well. The desalination plant is environmentally expensive. It requires a lot of electricity. It also sucks in a lot of water. And when you do that, you suck in a lot of marine life and you kill a lot of marine life. The Sierra Club has come out against the desalination process. When I've had conversations with them about that, I earned the Sierra Club endorsement when I was running. And that's something that we had conversations about. I think the bottom line is we have to figure out where we're going to get our water from, and not all of those sources are perfect. However, we can get some water through a desalination process. We can work towards making it less environmentally expensive. We can make it so that it's not controlled completely by a private company. We can also, at the same time, do another hard thing, which is try to figure out how we diversify our sources so we don't have to rely so heavily on processes like desalination.
Thank you very, very much for that. And Igor called it out, issues of common concern. And when Dr. Boyd Hodgson says, we got to engage all stakeholders, that's exactly the foundation, issues of common concern, because the existential climate and environmental, that's all of us. That's not any one of us. Okay, we have a few more minutes, and I'm going to take 2 more questions. That's going to be Ajamu, Mr. Malakali, and then Michael Goldman to follow, and then we will transition to our next speaker, please. Ajamu, please.
Yeah, let me first say shouts out to Jana. Obviously she's my shero, because what she did, she was able to bring this down to a real basic level, the issue of class, because that's something a lot of progressives don't engage with. One of the problems I'm having, one of these problems with environmentalists, is that they are not rooting their discussion vision within the context of a working class vision. I'm a labor activist, and also too, I'm a labor union president. We have to move away from looking at environmentalism as something that's separate from the working class. It must be rooted in the working class. It is, because it is the working class themselves that will not only be hurt by the current environment, but also be benefit from the environment. Dr. Hodgson was right. Working class folks don't have a chance to pontificate about the future when they're so busy dealing with the bread and butter issues of providing sustenance for themselves and their families to reproduce themselves. So therefore, that discussion must be rooted into a working class discussion and a working class vision. Our politics and discussion must engage a politics of infusion politics. That is, working class people must be at the center of how we have a discussion and visualize a new society that's sustainable, environmental sustainable. We can't have these academic discussions amongst a few privileged folks. And those of us who are able to engage in this type of dialogue, here's the reality: you are somewhat privileged. Okay, so now we got to shift our focus in our mentality in terms of how we look at the current structure of our society, and that is, if we do live in a class-based society, any discussion, any development of programs must have working class people at the forefront with that decision and that discussion. All too often, and this is another problem we have, is that when I deal with my Euro-American progressive colleagues, they tend not to look at the issue of race and gender, particularly issue of race, in that discussion. So in other words, organizing must first start in those communities where people are, and bring their vision. And also too, when we talk about environmental politics, we must talk about a social vision.
Thank you, Ajamu. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Society should look in the future.
We have to get back to the speakers. Thank you.
Ajamu, thank you very much. We're going to take that as a statement and just let it stand as a statement. Mr. Goldman, did you have something for us?
Yeah, just building on what Jenna and Ajamu said. When we did a resolution for a moratorium on fracking, I guess it's been about 10 years now, there was resistance from the building trades union. And really all the unions want is they want to protect their economic well-being as part of the working class, and they want to have jobs. So if we're going to transition away from the fossil fuel industry that's going to eliminate some of those jobs, shouldn't there be provisions in any program that does that to provide subsidies or benefits to those workers that are going to lose their jobs, and also transition them into, where we can, into retraining programs where they can learn to take on the new jobs that are going to arise out of the clean energy industry? Wouldn't that be something that should be part of any discussion? I guess that would be kind of for Igor, but
Igor,
anyone else on the panel that wants to chime in on that, of course.
Igor, can you take 2 minutes to respond to that, please? Thank you.
Happy to. Yeah, and so in the chat, I've been feverishly trying to find the links I referenced. And one of them is this labor report that was recently released on labor's own, what needs to happen inside and outside to achieve a just transition. I think this is a shared concern. I absolutely agree with Brother Ajamu. It is very much a class issue. It is very much a race issue. It is very much an issue of those of us who have the privilege to advocate and be at the table for these common concerns around what it would take to have a transition that involves everyone. What does it take to have a Green New Deal? It's our job, those of us who have the privilege to do that, to sit down, be humble, in the immortal words of Kendrick Lamar, and let those folks that have historically been left off of the table, or worse yet, been on the menu, to lead those conversations. So that's when we talk about a real Green New Deal, it is as much about the environment as it is about listening to the people that are directly impacted by these changes. So I absolutely agree. And then I also put in the chat a quote that I think is really powerful. I've been involved at the Sierra Club locally. It's from Hopkins, who has been a national leader in the Sierra Club around sacrifice zones and environmental racism. And that's why we need to achieve this just transition together, equitably, inclusively, and as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Igor. Danette and Dorothy, I saw that you both had your hands up, but we're going to move back to our presenters. Obviously, that conversation kind of leaned towards labor, but really the theme of it is grounded in inclusion and engaging all stakeholders. So I want you to remember that as we move forward. And folks, make no mistake, I'm not going to let us get off the path or go, off the rails too far. So I got you. I'm here with you, and we're going to move forward. I'm super excited with Aura Vasquez. Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and Climate Justice Director for the Center of Popular Democracy. I'm totally ignorant on, obviously, the second half of that, the Climate Justice Director for the Center of Popular Democracy, but I'm fully engaged in the LA Water and Power conversation, so I'm super excited to hear what she has to say. So with that being said, I will turn it over to you, Aura Vasquez. Thank you. Okay, seeing, hearing none, and it doesn't appear that she's on the list. I don't see her. So we will jump to our next speaker and then cycle back to her. Dr. Scott Kelley, Professor of Biology and co-leader of Raise the Alarm Group at SD 350. Again, I'm familiar with Dr. Kelley's work. He and I have not personally engaged, but as I transition personally into climate action and climate justice, through the Climate Justice League, I'm going to reach out and connect with Dr. Kelley. So here he is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it possible for me to share my slides? I think the host needs to give me that possibility. Okay, thank you.
He's got permission then.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so yes, thank you so much for having me. I hope let's make sure you can see my slides. You should see an image here. Semper Frax our future. So thumbs up from anyone? Okay, good, thank you. All right, always make sure. I teach a lot of classes. I gotta make sure people can see what I'm doing. So I'm coming in from, as I said, from SD 350, and we have a big push. We've been researching what the biggest climate issues and climate players are in San Diego, especially, or in California. And one of them is definitely Sempra Energy, which is the parent company of SDG&E. So we did a lot of research on Sempra, and we figured out that, in fact, they're really not an energy company. They're a fracked gas infrastructure company. And I'll tell you what that means. And so we have this website here, Semper Frax Our Future, that I'd love you to go check out. It's still a little bit of work in progress, but we're doing a lot in this. And we have a few action things that'll be coming up. So just to remind you of what kind of hellscapes the fossil fuel industry can create for us, we got up here in the top left, the Alberta tar sands, which is probably the most apocalyptic hellscape you could imagine on the face of the earth. And talk about water pollution. There's so much water pollution, it's unimaginable up there, and the cancer rates are out of the roof. We've got hilltop coal removal of mountaintops going on in West Virginia and other places. We got the Horizon oil spill, which, by the way, is still leaking in the Gulf of Mexico. And now we have fracking. So this is a habitat loss on a grand scale. This is in a Mexico basin and an entire fracking field in the bottom left, seen from the air. Talk about the amount of water you use for that. It's amazing. And you know what this is going to lead to. We're talking about major hurricanes, we're talking about locust swarms. Now, these things happen naturally anyway, but they're climate fueled now. They're much stronger and much more frequent. We've got a mega drought in Syria that led to a local conflict. So if you think you've already seen what droughts can do and what water resource scarcity can do to the entire Middle East, well, it seems to be coming here as well. And we're already seeing the fights happening, although they're not with weapons yet. And then, of course, we've got major forest fires, biggest ever, and they're ongoing already. And I know people personally who are in danger for fighting these fires. So this is a real crisis we have on our hands. And it is really terrifying. If you know the physics, if you know the biology behind this, the human body can only take so much heat before you literally die. Right? And we've got a heat dome right now that is endangering people's lives, endangering it in a big way all over the Pacific Northwest. It's really, really terrifying. All right, so Sempra's vision is to expand fossil fuels. Don't get all this stuff that they're talking about. They're really here to expand their fossil fuel infrastructure. Their sustainability stuff is utter nonsense. What they're trying to do is to expand the extraction of natural gas. It's not natural. They're trying to build infrastructure to sell this overseas. So they're taking our money to build infrastructure to sell frack gas to Asia and Europe. And they want to establish a multi-decade dependence on fossil fuels. This is especially fracked gas. And they're using our money to do it. And they've been using it for decades, which is really disappointing that we gave SDG&E another 10 or 20 years to keep doing this kind of thing. Now, 80% of this gas, according to the CEO himself, is fracked gas that they're transporting. So these are the fracked gas guys. Why is it bad? Well, water pollution, habitat loss, air pollution, man camps, rape and murder is very common in all of the camps that get set up around the fracking and oil industry. In the Dakotas, it's been well documented. It's happening on the oil pipelines. And I can tell you, I'm from upstate New York, and fracking became a big thing in upstate New York to the point where every time there was fracking, all these people, these guys came up, mostly from Texas, and suddenly the crime rate went up and the prostitution rate went up. It was just crazy. People were so upset, and it continues to happen. It's also explosions and leaks. And here's the thing. Methane gas that they're extracting is 80 times more potent a greenhouse gas than CO2 over a 20-year period. And they're going to be extracting for the next 20-year periods. So they're going to throw all of this extra CO2 and methane into the atmosphere over 20 years. And that's going to continue to heat the atmosphere. And actually, it's a question of whether we have 20 years, right? And the myth is that it's a clean transition fuel, but in the short term, it's actually worse than coal. So frack gas is also a really great scam. So this is actually this is happening in upstate New York, and it's happening all over, and it's happening in the Navajo Nation. This is a story from The Guardian and for the Dine, the Dinate, that people are being paid for their land. So they're allowing them they're saying, hey, you give us some of your land, we'll frack here, and you get a signing bonus, right? Here's your signing bonus. So they're taking advantage of people. There's 70% unemployment and 70% poverty in these places. These people need all the money they can get. And so they come in here and then they frack the land, and then the people can't sleep, and then they leave all the mess behind. So one case of this one household, 59,000 gallons of toxic wastewater were left in a big slurry that leaked, and they just walked away from it, left it with the people. This happens all the time where I come from as well. Sempra is really a natural gas holding company, and it has all of these different parts. So there's Sempra LNG, liquefied natural gas. They have SoCal Gas, which is responsible for the Liso Canyon leak, the largest CO2 emission and methane emission ever recorded, and of course, SDG&E. In 2019, Sempra sold all its renewable energy products. It increased its investment in natural gas or fracked gas. It's also focused on liquefied natural gas terminals, which is going to sell abroad. I'll talk about that in a second. And the growth of fracked gas, now this is really key, is dependent on these LNG export terminals. So we've got to stop burning fossil fuels, and we can't allow this to happen, or it's just going to be climate game over. Well, what is LNG, and why do frackers love it? Well, it's the frontier of fossil fuel expansion, because what they do is they take all this gas and they condense it into liquefied form by freezing it. So it's 600 times denser, and then they can put it on the ships and send it abroad. And the overproduction of natural gas, this is the solution they've come up with. They also want Biden to help subsidize this. So even if we reduce frack gas here, it actually gets exported elsewhere. So really, this is the linchpin. If we stop the exports, we're really stopping the growth of this industry. And so here's a little vision of what fracked liquefied gas is. Basically, you take it from the pipeline, you liquefy it, and you store it, and then you put it on a tanker to export it. And on the other side, the liquefied storage is vaporized, it's heated back up again, expanded, and put it in natural gas pipelines in Europe and Asia. But during this whole process, there's a lot of leakage, especially of methane. So in the fracking, during the fracking, there's release of CO2 and methane. During the scrubbing, there's release of CO2 and methane. There's release in the pipelines, including explosion. There's release at the terminals, and there's release on the tankers, which are also explosions, because natural gas is very volatile, can happen all the time. And also everything comes up the well, not just CO2, but methane, but their chemicals, their sulfur compounds and mercuries and even radioactivity come back out from the fracking. Here's an idea. This is a picture of the San Juan Basin and the methane releases. So all of these are reasons for methane releases, and you can see these bubbles. It turns out that leaks from wells are 2.5 times more than they're reported. And there's basically no regulation. We're not capping these wells. There's similar problems in California and everywhere fracking takes place. And of course, heavy water usage in some of the driest places in the United States. And how do we know all this that's happened? Because Semper really told us. These are their slides from their show. They're bragging about this thing. They've invested $32 billion, a third of which comes from San Diego ratepayers, into this fracking energy to export it off Mexico and in Texas. And what is their goal? This is really, to me, incredible. They are looking at 2.4 trillion cubic feet of natural extractable frackable gas that they want to sell abroad. Even if this is exaggeration, maybe, but even if they do half of this, we're in big trouble. We can't have all of this gas released into the atmosphere. And of course, our vision is to have something quite different, which is we would really like to have a just transition and something like a Green New Deal. We need project labor agreements. Energy efficiency, solar, wind, geothermal jobs are twice as many as fossil fuel jobs. This is where labor could get a lot more jobs than they currently have. There's solar installers, there's wind turbines, there's HVAC, and they're very competitive jobs. And just for an example, what we're looking at, the San Juan solar project is happening out where you could be doing fracking. There's a coal plant out there, and they're replacing the Four Corners coal plant with a 400 megawatt solar array and battery storage. And they're also looking at another 200 megawatt array with storage. So there's loads of sun out in these places, and you don't need so much water to run these things. And you can even convert, in Germany, they convert coal mines into batteries. And they actually employ more people in the coal mines now than they actually were employing to dig out coal. So we also have an incredible need for ecological restoration, restoring watersheds. There's a lot of jobs out there. And I think this all together, transition and jobs, moving away from frack gas is really the right thing to do at every single level. So that's all I have. I hope that made some sense.
Dr. Kelley, that was a ton of information. It's like drinking from a fire hose. You got a lot of laps right now, but that was a lot of great information. If you could also make that Prezzo available for us to review it later as a resource, that would be excellent. In full disclosure, folks, you know, at the risk of, depending on how you're going to feel about it. So I'm advising with a group that works on micro boron tubes that could actually coagulate oil, like at the Horizon oil spill, to be able to pull that out and clean it up a lot quicker. In addition to that, and again, this is my climate advocacy that a lot of folks here don't know about. We also have Ed Kosovic, who is a Nobel Prize winner, who has the patent on the mechanism to clean the plastic particulates out of the ocean. So between those two organizations and individuals that I'm advising on, we're doing those types of things that Dr. Kelley talked about to combat and mitigate and reclaim those areas. So I just wanted to share those things with you. Okay, Dr. Kelley's going to share his deck with us for later resource. We did have Aura Vasquez, join us, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and Climate Justice Director for the Center of Popular Democracy. Again, I said it before, I'm super excited to hear from her. So that being said, Aura, welcome. It's your show.
Hi guys, as someone that loves nature, of course, I'm getting out of nature. So thank you so much for putting this conversation together. I want to clarify a few things. I am a former commissioner for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. I was the youngest. I have been the only commissioner to be an environmental justice organizer. So I just wanted to say that because in your introduction, you mentioned the LADWP.
Yes, I did.
So a couple of things in the conversation around water that I want to bring up, and my findings, not only as a commissioner, but as an environmental justice organizer. We can talk about water, we can't talk about climate change, and we can't talk about the fight to move to 100% renewables without speaking about the atrocities that have happened to indigenous people all over the world, including in this country. So I want to acknowledge that at least in Southern California, and especially in Los Angeles, we get our water from indigenous lands that come from the Sierras. So why is this important? Because unless we crack down the code about how we can be resilient without having to import water from somewhere else, we are only half of the fight for climate change. So I, in my day job, I work as a clean energy advisor, as a clean tech advisor. So I do a lot of work around renewable energy, specifically microgrids on communities of color. And how do we make accessible renewables and clean energy to people of color that traditionally have lived in most polluted areas and also have had little access to renewables. So I mentioned this because what we're seeing in California, where we have a legislature, the majority of our local elected officials, our governor, and our high-ranking politicians in California are Democrats. They're liberals. They take great pride saying that we are ahead of the curve. That California is the national leader in climate change. You know, here in Los Angeles, we have a mayor that actually leads the C40, which is an association of mayors from all around the world that their mission is find solutions to climate change. But how true is that when we are the third exporter, third in the world of drilling with oil, and we see these most often in communities of color that have been again most impacted by. We are the number one. We frack for oil. So guys, when we're talking about fracking, let's not forget that our fight is not linear. It's not only about, it's not bipartisan. It's beyond that, because we have so many other competing interests around climate change with people that are most affected by climate change. So we have economic opportunities. We are in the middle of COVID recovery. And I love to hear all of the conversations around labor. But the conversation with labor can be very difficult. And especially now when they were just trying to kill net metering, which is a program that is so important for all of us and to continue pushing cities to get to 100% renewables. So I want to invite people to continue hammering the drumbeat around having a just transition, but let's please not be naive. Let's not be naive, because as much as I want labor to be with us, as much as I want them to stand with us in so many opportunities that we had, they have not. So now that it's not that we need to make them our enemy, but we need to open our eyes and see who are we really fighting against. And unfortunately, in the issue of climate change, just in general, oftentimes there are, again, many competing interests. And people forget that they're fighting for a job when we might not have a livable planet. So I'm speaking from a place where I was born in Colombia. I'm an immigrant. I'm a Latina immigrant from Colombia, where I lived in one of the worst polluted airs in my state. And this is how I started my work when I was 11 years old. My town, it still has the worst air quality. Just like Los Angeles, it still has one of the worst air qualities in the country. Not because we don't have the technology, not because people are not advocating for it, not because we don't think it's important, but because until we also address the fact that capitalism is running the show, and people are competing for, and people are competing for jobs, for economic stability, we're gonna find ourselves here again. So I really appreciate Igor bringing me to this conversation. I feel like you guys have a very well-rounded panel of speakers speaking about different issues. And the in the topic of it, specifically of water, I encourage people to look more into stormwater capturing, and also into what are some of the practices in the state that we currently have that are old and obsolete. And a lot of us as delegates, we're not only fighting to push for these different policies, but we're also fighting a system that is not set up for us to move fast enough at the same pace that climate change is moving. So there's a lot of things that we need to kind of integrate to this conversation, including the idea of the money and politics, and how really the fossil fuel industry is running the show by paying for by electing, by helping get politicians elected. And I can tell you this as a former candidate for city council in Los Angeles. We, the environmental community, the environmental justice community, the big greens, the small greens, whatever, in whichever category you think you are, we are not equipped to fight. And unfortunately, environmental candidates that can carry on the torch, that can get in there and fight the good fight, we don't know how to run candidates. So that's another point that we need to really get better at. And I'm excited to be part of this panel and like listen to your guys' conversation and insights, because there's a lot of policies that we can push. But guess what? There's no one pushing them. There's no leadership pushing them. There's a lot of grassroots energy. There's a lot of us fighting on the streets. There is a lot of us changing hearts and minds in our living rooms, in our homes, with our neighbors. But who are our champions? Real champions. Unlike Gavin Newsom. Oh wait, hold on. Let me just wrap up this stuff. Unlike Gavin Newsom, that claims to be the environmentalist of the year, but has failed to close Aliso Canyon, for example, or put a buffer between oil drilling and people's homes, hospitals, schools, and others. So I invite you to think about this a little more holistically, because the policies are there. We, in fact, we have enough policies and enough issues to fight for. We need leaders, and we need to get a lot more savvy about supporting our leaders and getting them to the finish line. Thank you, guys. I think I said a lot of things here.
No, that was super awesome. I have goosebumps right now. You and I, we're going to connect, and I'm going to bring you everything that you just talked about with some teeth in it. Just last year, November, folks, my team submitted an RFP to Caltrans, which included step cells that run along the freeways to capture stormwater and filter it out. Too big brain for them to accept our proposal in RFP. It was well underneath that RFP allocation and reward. I'm telling you, it's doable. Everybody on here can do it if we all join together, push the right candidates, support the right candidates, support the right initiatives, and really continue that drumbeat that climate change and climate action is the existential. That's what we need to do. And that's why we're all here tonight. So, or we're hooking up. We're going. 2026. I'm going to put that right now on your calendar. We're going.
Thank you guys, but again, I feel and I appreciate you so much, but I think the awakening has to be collective. We all need to get to that place where we're like, okay, my local candidate is an environmental candidate. I'm gonna go hard for this candidate, or my state candidate. So this is the awakening that we need, guys, because otherwise we're gonna have these panels every season and nothing is going to get done.
So what we need to do is we really need to come up with a way to incentivize Californians. And that's the mechanism that I'm going to share with you when we meet in a few weeks on how we're actually going to do that. So, outstanding. Folks, we are well ahead of schedule. Dr. Tiffany Boyd Hodgson, as a panelist and speaker, you have your hand up. I'd like to give you the floor. You're on mute.
Thank you so much. That's twice that I've done that. Sorry about that. What Ms. Vasquez said is so important. And I'd like to just amplify it, because running for office is difficult. When you run for a local water district office, and that's a great place to start, it's hard to get people to care about water because we take it for granted. It comes out of tap when we turn it on. It goes down our toilet when we flush our toilet. And so it's easy to take it for granted. One of the things that I found when I was running for office is that most people didn't know that the water district was governed by a board of directors. They also didn't know that they pay those board of directors money. And to me, that's something that should be accountable. If you're going to pay for folks to serve in office, you need to know who they are and you need to know what they're doing. And so local water districts have a lot of power. They govern rates, they govern infrastructure, they govern whether or not the infrastructure is governed by PLAs. They can bring jobs to the local region. They can govern education in the local schools, which is something that I'm fighting for, to get more people interested in water and pull that through community college and university. And I think it's really important to get behind candidates at all levels. And sometimes the local candidates get lost, and we need help. I expected my opponent to have $40,000 come in from developers for him, as had done in the past. I was fortunate that he didn't get that money, and that was helpful for me because I don't have developer money. I raised money like nickels and dimes from people that I knew. So it's important. It's important to understand the local politics on your water districts. And I'm just going to keep saying it until I am blue in the face. Look at your water district, try to run for that office. If you care about water, we need you in office. If you have progressive policies in your belt and progressive ideas, we need you in that office.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd Hodgson. Dr. Kelley, you had your hand up, and then I'm going to go back to Igor as panelists. You had your hand up, and I want to acknowledge that, please.
No, I'm sorry. That must have been a mistake.
Okay.
Thanks for asking, though.
Yes. Igor, you had your hand up as well. Okay. Igor, we'll circle back during the Q&A if you would like to dovetail on that with Ms. Vasquez's presentation right there, and then any comments to Dr. Boyd Hodgson's. Okay, moving on. Chief Colleen Sisk of the Winneman-Wintu, who are the middle water people. They are fighting not to raise the Shasta Dam any higher. So I will give the floor to Chief Sisk. Are you there, Chief?
Unfortunately, it looks like she has not registered. And she was a last minute acknowledger that she wanted to be here. And I'm sent out a series of extra emails and links for her to join us. But she hasn't registered.
Outstanding. Well, if she pops in the next few minutes, we're happy to give her the floor. However, we can transition into our Q&A. That will allow us 30 minutes to do that. And obviously with over 60 some odd people in here, we have a number of questions. Most of our panelists are still here. It looks like Aura's still driving. So if you have any questions specifically for her, please get those up and out first. Going back through the chat, hosts, Mike or David, if you, or even Danette, you were there as well. If you had any questions from the chat that you wanted to present first, that would be prudent.
Okay, let me, I'm scrolling up to catch a couple questions. I actually had one that was emailed in, so let me see if I can catch that one first. It was a multi-part question.
Before you get to it, Colleen Sisk has just joined us.
Oh, she's here. Never mind.
You put it out in the ether and you get it back in return. Thank you. Chief Colleen Sisk of the Winnemem-Wintu, who are the middle water people, and they are resisting and fighting against the raising of the Shasta Dam. They don't want that to go any higher. So Chief Sisk, please tell us who you are, what you're doing, and how we can help. Thank you.
Maybe perhaps internet connection.
Yeah, she's there. She keeps dropping out, but she is muted at the moment. So if she would unmute, we can hear from her.
Yeah, I can't see her myself, guys.
There she goes.
Great afternoon, Chief Sisk.
Yes, it is.
Welcome. Floor is yours.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we're at the headwaters of the state of California water system, and we're in this fire area, as well as the drought is taking its toll on our lakes here. We're shipping water like crazy to Southern California. Our rivers are full of water going down south. Yet, we have this large fire going on right now in Weed, and they're dipping out of Lake Chastina to try to put that out, as well as this is the mountain bank of the water system for California. And so, there has to be some ways of thinking about water and the use of water for California that must change. It has to change. And we have to start treating water as if, your life depends on it. That we have to stop contaminating water. We have to stop making communities where there is no water. And we have to start utilizing our skills and the scientific information about, how much water we actually need, as opposed to what we use and what we spill, and the designs of our homes that waste water, putting drinking water down toilets. The inappropriateness of water has to be changed now, and before there isn't any, and that time is coming. So, we are a tribe that is here up in Mount Shasta, and we pray to water as part of our rituals and our ceremonial beliefs. And that water, after we pray for it, goes all the way down through the Sacramento River Valley into the ocean. And we're concerned now that Governor Newsom, with the tunnels idea and the inappropriate work of helping water systems, and especially the salmon in the system, that helps the rivers. Rivers need salmon as much as the salmon needs water. And one without the other clogs up the system. And so the water isn't running the way that it should. It's not flowing the way that it should because of the lack of salmon that cleans the riverbed. and turns those rocks over and releases the sediments to go out to the ocean. So I just want to say that building Shasta Dam is not a solution to the water shortages in California. And building waterways around these dams so that the salmon can get up above those dams and help the river system would be a better spent dollar than to raise Shasta Dam 18.5 feet. I don't know how much time I have, but I could stop right there.
Chief Sisk, you have 10 minutes, so you're welcome to run through that if you like, if you have anything.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know, the gamut of water and electricity, or I guess the need for power. And right now, you know, they ship the McCloud River water 11 miles over to Iron Canyon Reservoir to be held for PG&E to dump it down into the Pit River to generate power that's sold to the highest bidder. Most of that power doesn't even come to California. But I mention that because right now, the river, the McCloud River, is running at probably less than 200 CSFs. And nobody really checks that because the gauging station is on Westland's land. And if you go to the McCloud River right now, it's supposed to be a cold water system. It is not that cold. There is moss growing in it. There should be some regulations that say it cannot be lower than the 200 CSFs, and that shouldn't be the normal. That's supposed to be the minimum flow. But people act like that's the normal flow. And we got to stop that because it's killing our rivers, and then it kills the water, and then it kills us. And so, you know, somebody has to kind of take the lead. I don't know who that is, but we have to start educating about the different systems in water, and also look at the systems of the trees that bring water systems and condensation to the mountains. And then those are the water banks. The lakes are not the water banks. You know, everybody says we're in drought because Lake Shasta is so low. It's probably at what, 35%, or it's going to be one of the lowest years ever. And it doesn't seem like anybody cares because the Sacramento River is still flowing bank to bank, and we're filling up all of the reservoirs in Southern California while we're getting cut back 20% water use, and we barely even use any water. It's not like we are extravagant in water. We have no lawns, no pools, no irrigation, no farms, and we are at the level of the most water use that we have is already efficient. Now to cut it by 20%, it cuts into, you know, we have no extra water that we're just kind of throwing out there or whatever. So we need to make sure that other people also are looking at the water systems and how the canals are going out and delivering water while we're not taking care of the mountains and the mountain rivers and lakes. And the systems up here are, I guess, are just giving. They're always giving, but there was a system of balancing that, you know, between the porcupines and the beavers and the salmon and the people who clean the rivers and didn't cut all the trees all the way to the river. So there needs to be a big change, but we are opposed to the Shasta Dam raise. We're opposed to the Delta Tunnel, and we are supportive of different ways, different mechanisms of utilizing and saving and using water. And for that to get into the schools again. It's like, I don't even hear about anybody talking about, oh yeah, there's a water shortage and we're doing this and we're doing that anymore. How come? How come that doesn't happen?
Chief Sis, thank you very much. if you could give us 3 specific calls to action, what would those 3 be, please?
It would be to, one, reevaluate how effective the dams are with the backup in them with the pollutants that are from the mining era in those dams. Like there's 60 foot of toxic waste in the bottom of the Shasta Dam, and nobody talks about it just to raise it higher. If they cleaned out that toxic waste from the bottom, they could hold more volume of water. But there's no water to fill Shasta Lake higher, so they need to study that. And also with the Delta tunnels. If the Delta tunnel is built and they don't have any scientific way of knowing what that will do to the bottom of the Delta, which is a highly efficient nursery for so many lives and the change of salmon, that has to change, so we need to talk to government. We need to get a committee. We need to have the tribes at the table. We need to really talk about the how much water we think should be polluted every day. Nobody even knows, but every day there's a choice being made to pollute the drinking water. Fracking does it, Pepsi-Cola does it, Crystal Geyser does it, all the towns do it, and nobody says, do we have enough drinking water to allow one more fracking mine or to allow one more Nestle's water bottling company to take the water and ship it out of state?
So what I'm hearing you saying is that 3rd call to action for us is to do an evaluation between water versus pollution, how much water there actually is to drink versus how much is being polluted. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Outstanding. And so what I'm also hearing you saying is salmon is equally as important as the bee for land.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
I am going to support you on that right here, right now, because this is being recorded, folks. I am off salmon going forward for the rest of my life. I'm putting that right here, right now. And I challenge you to take a time out on salmon, if not commit to that going forward.
Very good.
There you go. It is 5:30. We are well ahead of our schedule, folks. So we can open it up for Q&A. David?
Yeah, I'm going to actually throw in our call to action real quick so that we can see our call to action.
There you go.
And so this is the PDA call to action. We want everyone to contact Assembly and state senators, calling them to legislate for an immediate moratorium on fracking within California. If you double link, hopefully if you can double click on that link, it's find your rep .legislature.california.gov/. Hopefully you can click on that, and then also contact the governor, Gavin Newsom, and demand that he create an immediate more any further leases to frack in California. Again, that's at the governor.ca.gov/gov 40 mail. And then lastly, this is a very important one. Let us know how it went with a brief email at sandy@pda-ca.com. That's our email, and that just lets us know how many people have actually acted on this, and we can follow up and call different assembly members and state senators' offices and say, hey, we had a talk on doing a moratorium on fracking, and we want to know, we want to let you know that this is actually on our PDA-CA page, and you can go out and take a look at this and see that we actually had a fairly good crowd. And this is going to be disseminated further because people are going to go into our YouTube channel and promote this and let other people watch this meeting. So be sure to go on to YouTube, look up PDA-CA, and then go on. You can look at our all the panels we've done. But also be sure to like our page so that you can look at it anytime. And this also helps us get more bandwidth throughout the internet. So that being said, let's go back to anybody who hasn't given us a call to action to give us that call to action. I think we have. And then we'll go back to questions. And then at the last 5 minutes, Wade Alexander will step up and do our closing.
Outstanding. Thank you, David. So just want to give all of the panelists, again, the opportunity to share your call to action if you did not. Obviously, I specifically asked Chief Sisk for her top 3, as well as Tiffany, Igor, and Dr. Kelley. Or did you have specific? You're on mute.
Yes, I have 3 call to actions for folks. As we look at these policies, as we call our elected officials, as we call on the governor, as we sign those petitions, let's not forget that the real organizing is not just that. Go out there and talk to your neighbors. So whatever movement you're a part of, whether you are advocating for indigenous rights and changing policies on water in your municipality or at the state level, our movement, we need to strengthen our movement. And I say this because I see the environmental movement already taking off and thriving, but oftentimes we lack numbers and we lack people knowledgeable about our issues. So I invite you to talk to your neighbors and to don't take for granted the change of minds and hearts that happens when you talk to somebody, whether it's on these forums or speaking to them on one-on-one basis. Because posting on Instagram or on Facebook or sharing a video or going on a rant in social media is not organizing. We need to get our people to also understand what's going on. You know, I make videos about environmental issues constantly, and people still don't know who their mayor is or who their, elected official or what even a senator does. This is the state that we're in. Maybe not this group here, but a lot of people, and your cousins and some of your best friends' boyfriends and other people that that you sit with them to talk about just basic governance, and they don't understand. So it's our job. And somebody like the sister that was talking earlier about water issues and indigenous rights, and she was saying, well, I don't know who can do that. That's everyone's responsibility to throw down for the environment. So that's my call to action. I work on a lot of different fronts, and I would love to connect with all of you. I posted my contact in the chat. So please reach out in all of those ways. Be one of those ambassadors that amplify other people's voices. And that's the beauty also for us to get to know each other. So now that I know that Dr. Tiffany Boyd is doing something and I can amplify, or Steph is doing something and I can amplify for him. And this is how we're going to change, again, minds and hearts, because it's not just about policy.
Folks, she said throw down for the environment. That means roll up your sleeves, put up the dukes, come at me, throw down for the environment. Celebrate that. Dr. Kelley, folks, Igor put his 3 calls to action in the chat. Dr. Kelley, I just wanted to circle back with you if you wanted to amplify or reiterate your 3 calls. That would be great. And then we'll open it up to Q&A. And I see Michael and Dorothy up there first.
Yeah, so I don't know if I had 3 calls to action, but certainly the one people are putting in is the moratorium. I mean, calling Gavin Newsom and saying we have to have a moratorium. We are in this is a really critical moment. This is a moment that I think people actually understand the real danger that we're in. When there are fires burning down half your state, when their temperatures are going through the roof, and we're running out of water, this is the time when people actually start to realize, wow, climate's are really important. And this is when you can put pressure on politicians during these times while the news cycle is very short in this country, very short. So right now it's really important that we get out there. And I just want to just say one more thing. At 350, the RTA raised the alarm. We are willing to get out there on the street and help you. That is our entire job. So if there are things that you want us to do, we are looking to get out there and help on this very issue, especially 467, especially this moratorium. Fracking is it's just awful. So thank you.
Oh, Dr. Kelley, wow, good, goosebumps, all of you right now, giving me personally goosebumps, and I hope all 65 of you on this chat tonight, and those of you who are watching us remotely on YouTube channel, and you're going to recycle this out there, you're getting goosebumps as well, because climate action is a united front and threat, so let's go. Before we go, David, before I kick it back over to you to read any questions from the chat, we have some hands up. I'm going to go with Michael Goldman first, and then Dorothy Reich. We're going to then go over to you. Mr. Goldman.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Steph, that when we did the resolution on the moratorium on fracking, it started out that we were going to do a ban on fracking, which is really what we need more than a moratorium. So the moratorium is already a compromise. And anyway, we got the resolution passed, I think it was about 10 years ago, got help from Dorothy and Susie Shannon and other people that helped us get it passed. And it was a moratorium on fracking. Then I think it was the Environmental Caucus, maybe R.L. Miller, who actually got a platform plank in the California Democratic Party that we want a moratorium on fracking. So that's been there for a while. So if we're going to play the inside-outside strategy and push our politicians, and they're Democrats, they need to know that the platform of the California Democratic Party calls for a moratorium on fracking. And they need to follow what the grassroots of the Democratic Party have put in the platform. So I think that when you make those calls on a moratorium, you want to strengthen your call by pointing that out to our electeds.
Outstanding. Thank you, Michael. We will take that as a statement. But folks, the Q&A session is for specific questions for our panelists. So next we'll go to Dorothy, and before we do that, David, are there any questions in the chat that we can present?
Now let's go to the raised hands.
Outstanding.
It seems like that everybody's circling around. But again, I echo you. We don't want statements. We want questions so that we can get our participants to share their knowledge because we already have a lot of shared knowledge. So thank you.
Outstanding, David. Thank you very much. Dorothy Wright, great afternoon. You're on mute.
The first thing I want to say is about LNG terminals. So is there any move right now to build another one? We spent many years fighting an LNG terminal in Ventura County, and we managed to defeat it. And without the terminal, of course, Sempra has trouble getting their gas out. So I don't know if they're trying to get another one built, the movement again to do that. And the other question is, retraining is not enough for union members. They need to have comparable wages in their new jobs. So is there any movement towards trying to unionize companies like Tesla that do the solar? Because without unionization of these companies, we're really fighting a losing battle. The unions are right. They can't support their families on $15 an hour that Elon Musk wants to pay them.
I think that's a two-part question. I don't pretend to be the subject matter expert and who should answer it. However, I believe Dr. Kelley might be prudent for the LNG conversation, and then Igor from the labor and training perspective. Just my thoughts.
Yeah, so with the ports, that's a great question. Thanks. They've got one in Port Arthur, Texas. That's really the European terminal, and I think that is currently operating, unfortunately. And then they have one in Baja. So they're going just outside the United States. They have agreement with with Mexico, and I think the permits have been. I don't know if they're shipping anything out there yet, but it's pretty disastrous. It doesn't mean they can stop. They couldn't stop whenever we wanted them to, if there was enough pressure. But yeah, those are the two. That is definitely a new thing that they've just put together, and they're building it. And I think the permits have been given. And I agree with you with the labor issue. It's really important. I think with solar especially, it's not mutually exclusive. I'll let Igor turn more, but you can do big solar installations, which are often labor driven, and you can have project management agreements, or I think that's what they're called anyway. But you can also have rooftop solar, which actually does pay pretty well. And they might actually be able to be unionized. But there are a lot of other rooftop solar jobs that do pay well, just not quite as good as union jobs. But they're not mutually exclusive. I'll just say that. But great questions.
Thank you, Dr. Kelley. Igor, any response to the labor retraining?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to touch on really quickly the LNG question, to put things in perspective, now that fossil fuel companies are seeing that not only is it bad PR, but it's bad business as well, to engage in this extractive economy, more of them are trying to get into other areas. Close to my backyard in East Contra Costa, there is a plant that's being repurposed to run biogas and biomass, which is better than certain kinds of fossil fuels, but still not renewable and certainly not clean. So we have to be ever vigilant when someone tries to sell you something that looks green but is actually astroturf. On the question on a true just transition, I completely agree with Sister Dorothy. It's interesting. So this is where we need to all come together and have a real conversation. I was talking to so many assembly members that ended up supporting Assembly Bill 1139, which thankfully did not pass because that would have killed the ability to have any rooftop solar anywhere in California. But one thing that they were saying, which is just complete misinformation, they should have known better, but I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt, is that the solar industry is not unionized. And it's true that it needs to be more unionized, but I would say this, a good portion of the industry is. And in fact, in San Diego, Assembly Member Lorena Gonzalez's own backyard, and she was the main author of AB 1139, a number of solar companies are either unionized or the ultimate form of a union, in my opinion, which is worker-owned cooperatives. So that is something that we absolutely need to do a better job getting out there, making sure that solar is not seen as a tide that lifts all boats, although I think it is, but to actually do one better and create electric powered boats and create lots and lots of unionized jobs all over the place. And in Berkeley, I'm going to do a little plug. We are doing just that. There's actually, I've been talking to, it started out as a conversation with the building trades of, we're fighting each other so much at the state level. What can we do locally to work together? And right now we're doing, we did a building electrification ordinance. We created a climate equity action plan that is about to be voted on by the city council on Tuesday. What's going to come next is we are looking to do a pathway where if you're a contractor, you absolutely can bid for those jobs. But if you do, a certain portion of those jobs has to be a combination of local hire and union shop. So if that is successful, which we think it will be, we hope to roll out that model to the rest of California, because as go cities that are laboratories of innovation when it comes to policy, progressive policy, so goes California. And as goes California, as we all know, so goes the nation.
Yeah,
Thank-
I would throw it also back at the unions and say, you're not doing your job. If these companies are not unionized, where are you?
Thank
Why
you,
aren't
Dorothy.
you unionizing these companies?
Dorothy, you're
Well
absolutely
said.
correct. Igor, thank you very, very much. Folks, we have 4 minutes and we have Carol Pinson that has a question up. Carol? Thank you, Dorothy.
My question is, you talked about decreasing residential water use, but you never talked about animal agriculture. And my understanding is that why haven't you talked about animal agriculture, which according to my understanding uses far more water than does residential use?
Open panels. Any panelists, you're welcome to answer that one.
Nobody.
Animal water usage. Chief, do you have a perspective on that? Or Aura, Dr. Boyd Hodgson, anyone? We're talking methane. Cows giving off methane, right?
I saw the movie Cowspiracy. Has anyone seen that? The guy said, here they tell us to take shorter showers when, according to him, eating even one hamburger uses as much water as 60 showers, taking 2 months worth of showers does.
Yeah, Dr. Scott, do you have a thought on this?
Sorry, on the use of water in animal agriculture. Yeah, no, it's a huge problem. I mean, there's so much, and it's really driven by Wall Street in a huge amount. I mean, the almond business is just a huge giant. It's this big ag, and big ag has a lot of political power, and they're the real use of water. I mean, we talk about we're turning our showers out into toilets and all this, but the political power knows exactly. I mean, there's a giant river running down to the south in Southern California to grow wheat, to grow grain that gets shipped to China. So this is only BBC talks about this. We don't even see this in the local paper, but we are literally shipping water to China so they can eat beef by grain. So we grow all this grain, and so it's great to grow stuff now, but what a water hogging crop. So the kinds of crops we grow are incredibly important. And this is really a huge political issue, and this is the time to fight it, because we need every drop of water we can. And the agriculture industry is a much bigger deal than a lot of households.
Just to amplify what, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chief.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too is that, people's thinking about what drives the state of California and looking at agriculture, and, California is the 5th largest economy in the world, meaning there are countries that make a whole lot less money than California does, United States being 1 and then California being the 5th. But if you look at the economy that drives that position, it is not agriculture. Agriculture, it really only adds about 2% or 3% of the state's economy. Why do we ship 80% of the water to agriculture? Why do people keep supporting that when they don't even feed the state of California? All of those products are usually shipped to other places. But California still, puts up Farmers Feed America while we have a water crisis going on.
You're right, Chief Sisk. You're absolutely correct. Dr. Boyd Hodgson, you had something?
I just have a couple points to add. The perception that it is water expensive to produce hamburgers is correct. And, one of the things that I personally have done in my life is I gave up beef a long time ago and chicken, but that's something that we could all do to conserve water. It's also the case that where we buy our clothes, it's tremendously water expensive and environmentally expensive when we, to produce clothing, to produce the jeans that we wear. All of that is more than taking a 10-minute shower and flushing the toilet. But I do hear the point that, the chief made a few minutes ago about using drinking water in our toilets, which is ridiculous that we do that, especially given the water crisis that we have. And at some point we will need to decide how we can manage agriculture in the state. Because if we, a lot of our food is shipped elsewhere, and when we have a shortage of water in the Central Valley, then that's a food crisis for the rest of the nation. So that I'll just throw that out there, another topic for another time, but I just wanted to supplement that.
Thank you very much. Folks, I will say that we have put in a proposal to consult with Just Ag because of what you're saying there, Dr. Kelley. Ag is a huge perspective, area we need to impact. And I'm going to advocate for the Levi's waterless jeans to support you there, Dr. Boyd Hodgson. Okay, it is 5:52. We are going to hand it over to Wade. Yes.
Mike Dollar.
No. Who's in that?
Wade Alexander to take us out.
All right, everybody. Can you hear me? All right. So I just am so grateful for all of our incredible speakers who showed up today. Dr. Hodgson, Dr. Scott Kelley, Colleen Sisk, Ora Vasquez, Igor Tregub. You guys are incredible, and I'm just so honored to have worked alongside David Wright to make this happen. Give yourselves a round of applause, all of you who showed up here today. So before I go, I just wanted to say this. When I was up in Standing Rock for the pipeline protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline, we had the saying, water is life. Because water is so crucial to the survival of everyone on the planet, to all of our collective interests, right? So we got to make sure to keep fighting. And I just wanted to reiterate our call to action. Contact your assembly and state senators and tell them to have an immediate moratorium on fracking within California. Contact the governor, Gavin Newsom, and demand that he create an immediate moratorium on any further leases to frack in California. We've got to fight this. We've got to keep fighting the good fight and being good troublemakers. Thank you all so much for coming. I appreciate you all. Solidarity.
All right, I got one other note for everybody. There is a way to save the chat. If you go over to the ellipse, which is at the bottom of the chat, and you click on that, you can save your chat, and I just did it. And then also, people said a lot of things, and if you'd like to have your own little transcript of everything that was said here, click on the live transcript CC, view full transcript, and then at the bottom it says save transcript. Click on that, and it will also save it to a file to your computer, and you'll have every word that was spoken and said here. Lastly, again, let me go back to chat and remind everybody that to take a look at this. Once we get it formatted and saved, it'll be in on our YouTube channel. So click on YouTube, open it up, go to the search PDA-CA, and then you'll see our link, and click on that, like it, and then there is a whole plethora of wonderful topics that we have talked about. Everything from the $66 fix, which is trying to get education in the state of California subsidized by the, and not by students going into debt for life, to a bunch of other topics like reparations and other social justice issues that are important and key to our survival. So again, those are important things to remember. Mike Thaler, last word, please.
Okay, I have to say that Wade and others took the words out of my mouth. This has been incredible. I learned a hell of a lot and from our great panelists. And I want to say that Steph, you did a fantastic job of leading this meeting. I really am proud that that Dave asked you to do it and that you accepted it. And one other little nitpicky thing, and it is that when you go to our PDA-CA YouTube channel, you can't like it. I'm sorry. There's no option to like it. What you need to do is subscribe. So that's just the nerd in me trying to clarify that. But thanks everybody for coming. And in a couple weeks, on the 10th of July, we have the campaign committee for the No on the Recall speaking, and we'll have a chance to ask them questions, maybe even make some suggestions, but find out what they're up to. So watch your email for blasts about that statewide meeting. It's going to be a unique chance for us to react to the recall. So once again, thanks everybody involved, and thanks to those of you who came and participated in this meeting.
All right, Steph, you want to take this on out?
Let's just take a moment to give blessings and wishes to those folks in Miami. That's heartbreak, and we need to acknowledge that, because it's not only an infrastructure piece with the building and development, but it's a water table issue as well. And let's not think it's not, because it absolutely is. So let's just take a quick moment to take us out. Okay, folks, thank you very much. Everybody, make it a Sunday evening of Sunday evenings. Be blessed.